And we're live. Hello. Hello, everyone watching this. This is Nathaniel Woods, Class 4 practitioner with Shotai and Highest Health Coaching. And today I have the honor and the I almost want to say duty, to bring an expert to share about Business 101. This is a training of Business 101 of how to set up, um, how to design and arrange your business for success uh, in your health practice. And this is particularly for show type practitioners, but many of this may apply to other practices like acupuncture, um, maybe different herbalists, different other nutritionists, other nutritional coaching, and other forms that are similar. So Dave is here with us. Dave Reid is out of Newfoundland. Am I saying that right? Newfoundland?
Close enough. Yep.
Newfoundland, um, in Canada, and that oh, we lost you. There we go.
Yeah, there was just a
Dave
call there. I declined.
Dave is an expert in his field. He's been running, designing, restructuring, and been starting businesses for over 20 years, and he's specializes in restructuring them to make more efficiency and basically make them more profitable without always having to slash all of the people that are actually working there. And he's worked with businesses anywhere from two upwards of $80 million, and just by a miracle, which we won't go into that story this time, but for our viewers, we'll go in, and I'd love to you to share your story on our next interview, but about how you actually transition from being a very successful multi-million-dollar business coach or business consultant to a full-time now class 4 health practitioner with Showtime. Dave, welcome. It's an honor to have you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to help our practitioners, really get the basics 101.
No, I'm glad to be here.
Well, let's get right to it. A lot of us start our business. We are really good. We either have a health injury, health problem, and then we have to learn to heal it, or we want to help others heal, and then we learn an art, whether it be coaching or Shotai analysis of the eyes, teeth, and tongue, and we want to be able to do it correctly. And so today we're going to cover a couple different things. As a practitioner, um, there's a couple different types of businesses. Some people can go and just test out of their house. Some people can go and open up a clinic. So what I'd like to ask you, Dave, is where should someone start if they are? We'll just start from the starting point. If they're just got their license, they can practice legally, and what should be the first steps that they take?
I guess once we become a certified practitioner, a lot of people, I guess, initially start. A lot of people do start out of their homes, and that's fine. And I've worked out of my home at other disciplines before. But you really have to look at the market that you're living in. If it's somewhere that you want to work out of, of course, some practitioners travel. It's not something that I do myself very much. And for me, my experience having worked out of my house before, I really kind of wanted that separation between my home and my workplace. So when I, got into Shotai, especially more as a full-time practice, I started to set up a clinic in a very public place. Actually, where I am, upstairs are all the doctors, downstairs are the chiropractors, and I'm kind of on the middle floor. So I just sort of established myself in there, and very slowly started to grow my business from there.
Oh, that's beautiful. So I want to ask you a couple questions. So you mentioned, and this is something I'm learning from experience, but when we're just starting, we might not mind our lives meshing where we're so immersed in actual doing the work and doing the practice and wanting to help people that we could easily let clients come to our house, and that boundary can become very vague or clear, or there is none. Out of your experience in doing 20 years, why is that important to you on a personal level, that you've learned like that wasn't really healthy or best for you?
Yeah, at one point I was doing a lot of brokerage, and that's something I could do out of my house, and I was very excited to do that. But I just found after a while that I was kind of really living with it. I never got to have that home life separation from my work, because whenever that phone rang, I would go answer the phone. I could be there 10 o'clock at night doing work. Uh, Whereas, at some point when I moved on from the brokerage to do, different things, I kind of make a conscious decision that I wasn't going to do that again. So again, when I got into the Shote practice, immediately I started, and I found a very nice, location and set up a little clinic. Now I've moved into a much bigger clinic, bigger facility. So, we start at 9 o'clock, we finish at 5, 6 o'clock. And when we come home, I have that good separation between the work and my life. Now, I still take calls if there's an emergency with a client. If someone has to, I did a call this weekend for a lady. She was immobilized, and I actually did a house call for her. But 99% of the time, I have that clear separation between my home work.
Mm.
For me, it's a very healthy way to operate.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, just a little technical note. The phone was going upwards a bit and it was cutting off your face. Good. There
Okay.
we go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Perfect. Beautiful. The next question I have is that that's really important, I think. So basically, you're saying that when there's not a healthy separation, that the work starts impeding or starts interrupting. Basically, the your mental space, your mental real estate, and did it affect your family at all?
My family was younger then, so I think I took a little advantage of it. I think it would be even more important now as my kids are a bit older. And it is what it is. We're dealing with people that aren't always really healthy. So for me, I don't know if I want to bring that into my home space, my home energy. Again, I think it's a good separation to keep that between home and the clinic.
Okay. And let's talk about that from a client's perspective. What kind of professionality, what would you say from experience that a client would benefit from, or what are some of the benefits of having a professional space where a client can come to, as opposed to if they were coming to your personal dwelling?
Yeah, I think it's people walk in, and I'm not pretending to be a doctor or anything like that, but when people walk into my front of my clinic, and things are organized, all the inventory is laid out in front of them. It presents you as a professional person. So I think when people come in, that's the impression that they get right away. Then of course it's always the way we carry ourselves, but I think we all, most of us, carry ourselves as professionals. But it's that first impression when people walk through the door. And a lot of my clients are professionals. And I'm at that stage now where I am getting a lot of recommendations. I have chiropractors and doctors sending people to my doors. So I think that's all part of that first impression when they come through the door. Right?
Yeah. So would you say that it lends to, especially maybe people who are a little more skeptical, since this art is very new, yet new to many people, and what we do is also it's not very common. Would you say that professionalism lends to people trusting you more?
It certainly makes it easier for them to get through the door. Right?
Hmm.
It gives me that opportunity to get them in and test them and show them what's going on. Show them what's going on, and you really get their attention. But if they were coming to my house into my living room, for me, I don't know if a lot of people that I get, the nurses and the CPAs and those folks, I just don't know if they'd be as ready to come through the doors.
Right. Okay. So some of the more professional people actually have their barrier to entry per se. Their openness is they're more comfortable in a professional setting.
I think so, and again, it just and I think even Terry. This happens to Terry quite often. People call Terry Dr. Bell, and I always make sure I correct people. But often they say, "Oh, Dr. Reid," and I say, "Well, I'm not a doctor, but it all goes with to that environment." And I would never want to be as staunch as an actual medical clinic, but I think it's always beneficial to have that professional environment and just that professional attitude when people come in. And again, there's people work out of their homes and they're absolutely successful doing it. But for me, I really do like having that separation.
Yeah, I agree with you. And my girlfriend particularly hates when I bring work home. She wants, when it's her time, she wants her time, and she wants, and she deserves it. And I don't have kids, and I can only imagine if I had children how they would want time and they would deserve that time, and I would want to give them that time. And if I was the way I'm available, because I am without children and without family other than my partner, it's that I can already see how it would take away from my ability to be present with the children or with anything else of a family, you know. But let's talk about. So I'm going to go back to the home versus clinic. Should and I just want your business recommendations, like no judgments towards anyone doing it otherwise, but just strictly from a professional level. I would love clear advice. Do you suggest, especially for tax benefits, that someone who is just starting, do they start a clinic by and before they do that, should they uh, get incorporated or should they be a sole proprietor? Before that, can you can you answer the question of what is a sole proprietor and what is um, an LLC or an incorporated business? What's the difference?
Sure. With the sole proprietorship, there's a lot of people started. Some people operate long-term that way. Essentially, that person is taking on all the liability for that company, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're really starting to do any amount of volume, there are significant tax disadvantages to doing it that way, as opposed to forming a limited company or an incorporated company. There's, the company becomes a legal entity upon itself. So there's certainly much less liability for one of the directors or, sort of owners. And it certainly lends itself to a lot more tax advantages. And that's why I always encourage someone to find themselves someone that they trust in terms of, just an accountant, and have those conversations, and they can really bring you to tune with, what are the best advantages for you. Because I know so many practitioners that, don't claim their vehicles. They don't claim their fuel. It's endless the things. And I'm telling them, and I always try to emphasize that, these are all benefits that you should be taking advantage of. And I don't pretend to be an expert, but, there are experts out there, and they're really not very much money. Talking to a good accountant and having them a little bit of work, and sometimes getting an accountant is someone who can just get you started and get the ball rolling, and you can start to take these things on yourself once you understand what needs to be done.
Yeah, so you mentioned some really big things that I just want to go on a little bit slower and like a little bit go deeper into. So a sole proprietor is basically, if I understand you, you said they're taking on the liability of the company. So if for some reason as a health practitioner, if somebody thinks you're making false claims, if somebody is maybe not happy for whatever reason, maybe you just get just a bad apple, for example. Someone has a really hard time in their life and they end up taking out on you and they try to sue you, that liability is going directly to you as a person. And is that correct?
Yes, whether it's, and that's why we should all have malpractice insurance, by the way. Uh, but yeah, it would go back to us personally, as opposed to an incorporated entity. Then it goes back to that company, that entity, right? So at the end of the day, if heaven forbid anything like that should happen, yeah, you don't lose your home and your car and all that, those sorts of things.
So that's one of the
Worst
risks.
case,
Anybody,
absolutely. With
just so I
sole
make sure I
proprietors,
understand.
with sole proprietor, absolutely. Yeah, to me, that's one of the biggest risks.
So you're risking you're just to make sure I understand, you're risking your personal assets, which is if you own a home, if you own a car, if you own any stocks, and you get in a suit or some sort of trouble or a claim, if heaven forbid somebody gets hurt, that your assets will be the one thing that they can go after to compensate. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
So it's a huge risk in that way, especially in the field of health, and a lot of people are doing that.
Yeah, and that's, I try to emphasize to a lot of these folks, and getting incorporated is typically not a big deal, especially if it's a pretty small investment, but in terms of what it can do for you in terms of protection and liability, and the taxes and how that all unfolds, at least here in Canada, it's a massive difference, right?
Yeah, so that's beautiful. I want to go into the tax benefits next, and some of the specific ones, and talking about claiming gas and claiming your car and things. But you mentioned also that um, why do you think that some people or so many people are still doing sole proprietor if there is so many benefits? Why do you think so?
I think some of these things are scary. If the idea of incorporating a company sounds like a big deal, but there's really not much to it. Getting a lawyer, and a lot of times if you get the accountants, some accountants can actually do it for you. It's like $1,000, $1,200. It takes 2 or 3 days. Your company's incorporated. And the only thing is, of course, when you get incorporated, then you become much more visible to the government as well in terms of revenue and those sorts of things. So, you have to be aware of it on that side. But, if we're all going to play the game the way we should and stay above board, then that's the way we need to do. But at the same time, there's a lot of tax benefits to being incorporated and going that way.
Okay, so what I think I'm hearing, especially as someone who didn't understand all business, is that it's a little bit. Some people could have less to actually, because I know there are some people who aren't fond of government, for example, and they may not want to share all their personal information and business information. So some of the benefits from a sole proprietor is that um, they are, you have to be a little bit less. Well, technically you don't, but some people can give less information to the government. Is that correct?
Yeah, sort of.
You
You
know,
know,
yeah, it's a little hole there.
there's a hole there, but at least here in Canada, I know with sole proprietorship, if you're generating any amount of revenue after the first year, I mean the government's share of that can hit up to 50% tax.
Wow. Okay, so that's
Yeah,
where we need to get to. So 50, if you're generating over a certain amount of income, you're as a sole proprietor, you could be charged up to 50% of your income
yeah.
tax.
So I mean, why go to work?
So, and you kept mentioning that being incorporated can get you tax benefits. What's the different tax benefits, the ratio compared to up to 50% if you're talking about those higher incomes?
Yeah, so I mean that gets you at least down in the 30% bracket, but your ability to claim things becomes much more significant. So just claiming your space, your insurance, your vehicle insurances, all those things, it becomes a much more straightforward process.
So, okay, this is brilliant. And just for those who don't know, claiming is basically reporting back to the tax revenue service that these expenses, this money that went out, is towards the business growing, and therefore the government doesn't tax you on that. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the taxes you do pay out, you get it back.
Oh, you get it back. That's
Yeah,
what
so
you get a return
what
on that.
yeah, so when I put gas in my vehicle, I submit that as an expense of my company. I get that part of that tax back. When I buy products to put on the shelf of my shop, I submit all that. I get about all those taxes I paid. I get those back. Conversely, the services that I provide, the taxes that I collect, I have to submit. Right?
Right, right. And okay, so can just so I understand, can sole proprietors also have tax claims and benefits in that way, or they can't?
Absolutely, they can, but they get a little more limited, and it gets a little more. Being a sole proprietor, they tend to needle you a little more, and the amount of tax you can claim is certainly not as much as an incorporated entity. In addition to you having to pay more tax in as well.
Right. Okay. So generally, what is for um, for liability, for tax benefits, for maybe even some level of professionality, and then reliability, which is risk factor, safety for you and your own assets. Is it safe to say that you would generally recommend to consider getting incorporated in a practitioner?
I would, find yourself a good accountant. Accountants aren't real expensive, and have that conversation with them. Being a sole proprietor compared to a incorporated entity, and they will very clearly be able to lay that out for you. And it won't take very long for you to see the benefits of becoming an incorporated entity.
So do you know just like the first two steps other than having an accountant do it? I'm just curious if you know the two or three steps in Canada that they would have to do to get an incorporated company?
It's pretty easy. The big thing you can go directly to a lawyer, or you go through an accountant. Some accountants will do incorporating. And yeah, they're just going to need basic information, address, who are the directors, who are the directors of your company going to be? Maybe it's just you. Banking information. You should have, at least here, you should have a taxation number. And just with those basic things, they can get you incorporated and get you rolling. I
Awesome.
know a number of people I've helped, not in Showtime, but get incorporated this last year. And rather than taking an actual paycheck from their company, they took dividends, which are tax free. So every month they've been taking a dividend, right? So most all their profit they're putting back in the company. They're getting a tax-free dividend and living on that quite well. So that's really helping them grow in their first couple of years. But they
So
had a really good accountant. They had some really good advice to help them with that.
that's really important. That's really important what you just mentioned. So when you are incorporated and you have the entity of your business, it's like a container. You or the person who's working can be an employee or not the owner. The owner gets not a salary; they get what we call in business world dividends, right? And can you explain what a dividend is versus salary?
Uh, I'm no expert in this. I'll be honest. I'm not an accountant. Uh, but yeah, it's a payment that comes to you through the company. That's not a regular salary. Now, right now, I pull a regular salary out of my company because I am a director, but I'm an employee of. So is my wife. But I do, where I had already invested enough into my company, I didn't feel the need to take a dividend. A dividend, and I do have other people that I've helped out with, so they're just taking dividends. So it's a tax-free payment that can come from their company based on their income. It's a set amount based on what the company is generating that they can take every month from the company tax-free. It's a nice little benefit, especially starting off with a new company.
Yeah, that seems like a key piece for our viewers to understand that you can pay yourself as the owner or an employee if you are a company, and you can get tax benefits from the dividends, and then you have less liability, reducing risk of our personal homes, financial, families, and our assets. Even, for example, if somebody inherited something or inherited a big inheritance, that if you got into trouble and you were in a sole proprietorship, they could go right after that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as a sole proprietor, like I said, if anything happens, then they can come after your personal assets. As
Yeah,
an incorporated entity, no. They can
that's
only have
just
to
a
go.
really
They can
big
only go
thing.
after what the corporation has.
Thank you. This is really good. I think if you guys are getting any value out of this while you're watching this, go ahead and put in the comments below that you're definitely getting some value. And if you have any questions for Dave throughout this, go ahead and put in the comments below. Um, and I will be happy to get those answered as soon as I can. I'm doing my best to answer as many questions as I can here or get asked. So, um, claiming and taxes. What are some of the tax benefits of having a clinic? So let's say the average person is going to pay $500 to $1,000 for their renting their clinic space, maybe $1,500, um, and that's a monthly bill. Then they have overhead of their lights, um, what else, electric bills, and maybe then they have their malpractice insurance. All of those you're saying are tax deductible and can be reimbursed throughout into your taxes. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Any of the tax, because here, when I pay a power bill, there's a portion of that power bill that is tax. When I pay rent, a portion of that is tax. When I pay my insurance, portions of that are tax. So those are the things that we can claim and get back. Um, training expenses. Even in my house, I do claim, because I do training at home. I do it all the time. I'm always reading and training. So I'll claim things at my home for doing training. And no different than when I go to a show Thai course. I keep all those receipts and I claim all that. That's part of training. They're maximum amounts, but there's amounts of those money that I will get back because I've invested in myself in doing training.
So just so people could have an idea from your perspective, what are some numbers that you, let's say from a clinic perspective, you're running a clinic now, you have a good sized clinic, you have a good sized inventory, which we'll get to. What are some numbers if you can properly account for your expenses in a way to report your taxes and then for your claims, what is some amount that you could be paying, or no, that you are getting back that you would be paying if you didn't claim them? Like if you could throw some numbers out for a year.
Well, I mean, it could hit like 30%.
Holy
Yeah.
moly.
Yeah. If you got someone on your side, an accountant who's really paying attention to what they're doing, especially for us, because I seem like I invest quite a bit in training, whether it's show tie or whatever else I can do. Um, and I make sure, and I've worked with accountants over the years, and I've just become very good. And there's real good tools you can get too. I mean, honestly, most of my receipts and all that, I just take pictures of them all. It goes right into a little accounting system. It's amazing the tools that are out there. Whether it's I go to lunch with a client, I take, just get all those receipts, and all those things, you claim them, and it can be really significant. So,
Wow.
it's one thing to be generating revenue, paying less tax, but claiming more as well. It all adds up, especially at the end of the year.
So just for simple numbers, so people can understand, if somebody is bringing in revenue of $100,000 and they can claim $30,000 worth of all, let's say their expenses are legitimately 30,000, or whatever the numbers would probably be. You're saying that they could get up to basically 30% of that income can be claimable and then reimbursed if you properly do it and account correctly.
Yeah, yeah, you can really there's some good things there to take advantage of. It's significant dollars.
Yeah, that really adds up. And if you do that, just gonna so people can really get a big picture here. If we can do that year after year for 5 years, um, that's quite a bit of money. I mean, 3 times 5
I
is
mean, it is what it is.
$150,000 over 5 years.
Essentially for me, my vehicle, up front I have to come up with those costs and the O&M and all that, but at the end of the year, when it comes right down to it, my vehicle really costs me nothing. So I'm driving for free, right? Uh, you know, it's those sorts of things that you really have to look at. I go and I do training. Yeah, there's a little cost to it, but really I get a lot of that cost back.
Yeah.
And there's always that upfront expense, but I'm at the point now with my company, the company's paying for it anyways.
Yeah.
But
So if you were,
yeah,
just so we can have one more, let's really get in there. If somebody was a sole proprietor and they had $30,000 expenses, how much do you think um, and let's say they're making 100K a year, we're just giving easy numbers, $100,000 a year, and they're a sole proprietor and they have $30,000 expenses, they would probably have to pay more tax on that because of limitations, you said. And then what would be the main difference there, like between the two?
well, they'd be paying more tax for starters. Plus, they get scrutinized a lot more as well because my vehicle is not owned by Dave Reid. My vehicle is owned by Health Route, my company. Even though I drive it everywhere and I have a company card and I put fuel in it and I use it. Uh, at the end of the day, that's Health Route's company vehicle. As opposed to if that was Dave Reid's vehicle, I'd be a lot more scrutinized over it, right?
Yeah.
So when you're getting scrutinized, you tend to be more careful in terms of how it's used and all those sorts of things.
Oh wow. Okay. Now, I I wanted to answer another question I had. In the States, it's really easy to get incorporated. You actually literally just go to irs.gov and you purchase an EIN number, which is a tax ID number in the States, for your company. And then you have to go to the Secretary of State. So you look up your Secretary of State and you have to register your business under the Treasury. And basically, um, those are the only two steps it takes to get incorporated, and I think it's much less. It's hundreds of dollars, not thousands here.
Yeah, it's like $1,000 or $1,200 here typically, and it takes 2 to 3 days and you're done. So.
Nice. So it's really easy, painless, and okay. Now let's go on to what a lot of people who are practitioners, they don't have any we're one of the biggest things we've covered between you can benefit not only taxes but liability for setting up in an incorporated business um, is protection. So let's talk about the next level. Working in health, things can go wrong. It's is it should someone have malpractice insurance, or do you think it's a waste of money?
I think you'd be crazy to be working without malpractice insurance. I have wonderful clients, and I've had nothing but fantastic experiences with 99% of them. But I have two people I can think of in the last number of years that, I was glad I had malpractice insurance. Nothing ever came of it, but when they walked through my door, I was very calm and I handled it. But there's always going to be that person out there. And people always seem to have the mindset that this type of insurance is very expensive. But it ranges across. I've talked to a few different practitioners who have it in Canada. It ranges from anywhere from $600 to $1,000 for a year. And I think that's quite a small amount of money for the peace of mind that you can get.
And what would just so I understand, can you explain a little bit what malpractice insurance would cover? And
Well, any situation where a person thinks that you have done them harm, that's pretty much what it comes down to,
oh wow.
right? And for us, I'm always very careful, and thanks to Terry's training, that I never prescribe. I only suggest. I don't diagnose. I analyze. But like I said, of the hundreds of clients I've dealt with, probably thousands at this point, yeah, I've had those two people came back and said, "You made me sick," and and my response is, were you unhappy with the service when you're unhappy with the products? Yes. Would you like a refund? Yes. I refund them their funds. We do a transaction for that, and away they go. Unfortunately, that's been the end of it. But at the end of the day, if they decide to push it further, that's when I would have engaged my insurance.
Right. So just so we can give a worst case scenario picture for anyone who doesn't have malpractice insurance, if someone was to come to you and they actually said, they wanted to go further and they were going to, what would some of those natural steps happen, and what would that look like legally, time wise, as well as financially?
I think it's, fortunately, I've never had to engage it, but I
Sure.
think it'd be no different than using any other type of insurance. If an incident occurred and then I received a legal document stating that, I was being charged, whatever that effect, in a legal manner, then I would just turn that over to my insurance company and have them deal with it directly.
Oh,
I see
lovely.
that being completely outside the scope. If I was in an automobile vehicle accident, uh, I just pass that over to my insurance and they take care of it. That's completely, I just carry on with my life.
So you basically have someone to represent you in the case, in the proceedings, and the resolution of the problem. The
Yeah,
reason what I was also asking is if they filed a lawsuit, would they? The question is, they wouldn't having insurance. Would that prevent a lawsuit if they could just go to the insurance and then maybe be compensated or something? Like the insurance
that's
would.
between them and the insurance company. If they ever want to settle, or if the insurance company decides they want to fight it, that's fine. But
It,
that's why I
they would
pay my
handle it all.
premiums and I let the insurance company sort that out.
Got it. So that would save you tremendous time. And what happens if you didn't or anyone didn't have that? How else would it go?
You are personally legally liable, which is a
And
terrifying prospect, in my opinion.
and that means any damages that they can prove in court, right, that they can then sue you for.
Yeah, for sure. And of the two instances I've had over the last 4 years, I think one of them, as soon as they found out I had malpractice insurance, they just backed off. They didn't want to play. So
Oh, because they feel that you have support. Basically, you have legal counsel.
yeah, I have a whole insurance company there to take care of that. And
And
you know what? Insurance companies don't like to pay money. They like to collect it. They don't like to pay it out. So
that's
fasten your
true.
seatbelt, right?
So they it's in their benefit to defend you in the highest amount because they're going to pay less.
Oh yeah, I mean this person they accused me of poisoning them with iodine. There was too much iodine in their herbs, and I was like, that's almost literally impossible, but
It
so
is
you lose, right?
impossible. You can't overdose on iodine.
Yeah, yeah. So it was too silly to talk about.
It's so
And as
funny.
soon as I said, and they said, they're going to get a lawyer. I said, look, no problem. I'll just pass off to my insurance company. And they're like, oh, I said, oh yeah, I've got malpractice insurance. And they just left. I never seen them again.
Oh, lovely. See, that's really important. Like, that's huge. Okay, good. So I hope somebody can get that when they watch this. Um, so let's go into. So we talked about incorporating our business. We've talked about getting malpractice insurance. We've talked now. If you are, um, is there anything I've missed so far that you want to just touch on?
The only other thing in terms of insurance, if you're going to have, whether it's at your home or in a separate clinic, you need liability insurance as well. If you have people stepping on your property, you better have liability insurance. I think the minimum is $1 million, but I always keep it $2 million for the $400 a year it costs. Whether people are walking up your front step and slip and fall, or they're walking in the front door of your clinic and slip and fall, you're open to that liability. So that's the type of insurance that we should all have as well, no matter where we're dealing with people.
Right. So 2 million is what you prefer, and then I looked up. By the way, I just did the math, and $600 divided by 12 months a year is only $50 a month. So to be able to protect yourself for good and have peace of mind for this is only about $50 a month. And if it is up to
Yeah,
$1,000, it's very minimal. We pay less than that for health insurance.
yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about professionality um, and money that you can make from having a clinic. When you walk in, a client walks in, they see your inventory, they see your certificates, they see your professionalism. You get to create that space, which they are the information that they're basically intaking, and then they get to have the experience with you, and they're being tested. How do you think that benefits a client in the process of learning to trust you or a practitioner versus if you're random at someone else's house and there's no professionalism really other than how you interact with them and give them the test.
Yeah, for me, it always goes back to, it's that first impression. It's like I had new clients today. They came in, they sat down in my waiting room. My wife is there; she does reception. There's a TV playing there with a number of different health shows. Some of them are Terry shows. While they're waiting, often they'll browse around the products. They'll read through some of the brochures I have there on those products. I may have a highlighted product right now. I've got HCLO and all the benefits of it highlighted on the wall. We sold 6 bottles of that today. And then people, by the time, because they usually show up early, and when I get them to test them, they probably have some questions just by reading the information or watching shows just in my waiting room. So it's a good introduction to get them in before they even get into my office, before we can have the conversation and test them.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So it's really do you think that's creating more openness towards receiving the information and the guidance you're going to, and do you think it's helpful for building the relationship with a customer?
Absolutely. I just recently recorded an episode with Terry on the show, and my wife has gotten very good at playing that episode when new people come in. So, what do they walk into? First thing they see is myself sitting down with Terry Bell on TV, having a conversation. So, that really helps their perception about what they're walking into, right?
That's a great feeling. So the next question, you mentioned this earlier when we were talking before, also that some of the benefits of having your inventory and the space where people can come is when you're not actually testing or you're not in the office for whatever reason, maybe you're out to lunch, clients can come in and sometimes they want to pick up reorder. They want to buy new things or buy things for other people. And you said that a lot of times clients will just come buy their own stuff without you having to test them. Is that your experience?
Yeah, we're seeing more and more of that all the time. Especially as our clientele base grows. People will just come in. They want their magnesium 3, they want liquid magnesium. Uh, you know, and I'm seeing more clients starting to build up their war chest at home a little bit. They'll come in, they'll buy some cold call just to have on hand. They'll make sure they got a bottle of colloidal silver, they've got a bottle of HCLO. If they're running low on something, they'll pop in and grab some, right? So it's that piece of it is not something we really expected, but as over the year since the new clinic, we're seeing more and more of that, especially again where we have all our inventory up front and people can see it as soon as they walk through the door.
So if we had to put a number, and I know you probably look at a lot of numbers, but if you had to guesstimate, would you say like 10 to 20% could end up being those types of sales?
For sure, we're probably over 10% now,
Yeah.
and growing. The other thing we've just started offering through our new point of sale system is gift cards. So I've had actual gift cards made with company name, logo, and all that on there. So we
Oh,
just
that's
had
a good one.
yeah, so we had just a little thing put inside the door because we're in a mall. It's just Health Root, give the gift of health for Christmas. So people are coming in, they're buying $50 gift cards, and that's what they're giving people for Christmas.
Oh,
So that's
I
another
love
thing
that.
yeah, so it's getting people who might not usually come through my door. So it's a $50 sale, and they're giving them to family members or friends who might not usually come through my door. So that gives me the opportunity to give them a good experience.
Oh, that's awesome. And just for those who don't know, I want to just plug in that Dave, you have had 30, um, rough 30 um, patients who've had been tested for cancer, and they went through some of your protocols, and they have been retested and are now showing that they don't have cancer. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, we've treated, it was close to 40 people now. 30, yeah, I think 30, 31 of them we've got cleared up. Um, in that, clinically, medically, they don't have cancer anymore. We have lost some clients. There's no doubt about that. But even those, it's amazing how you help improve the quality of people's life at the end of their lives. So yeah, it's been truly amazing how that's occurred for us.
Yeah, how's that knowing that you went from business, you went from working with $60 million, $80 million companies, helping them be more efficient. How does your efficiency mind and your desire to reorganize and structure, how's that feel when you have 30 people come back to you and say, I don't have cancer anymore?
Yeah, it's every time is amazing. And it doesn't have to be cancer either. It's having that 6-year-old who doesn't use the bathroom but once every 2 weeks to they use the washroom every day now, and it's changed their life. Or I had a young man who had a peanut allergy, a severe one. He was going around terrified with an EpiPen all the time, and I mean, we've literally gotten rid of his peanut allergy, so he can go out and function in society now without being in absolute fear. So don't get me wrong, the cancers and the Parkinson's and all these things you get involved with are very, very humbling and astounding and all that. But it's the day-to-day things that, just helping people feel better and work better, and just improving the quality of their lives. Whether it's sometimes you put in somebody's hip, right? You fix their hip for them so they can walk straight and they can sleep at night.
Oh
It's
yeah, I
very
love
basic
that.
things sometimes.
So it's very fulfilling for you. So I want to respect your time, and I know I have just a few more questions about inventory management, some of the apps that you were talking about, and then the other question I wanted to ask you about was where am I at here? Inventory apps. Just so far, is there anything I've missed that you think is important for our new business owners or current Showtime practitioners that would be really helpful to know regarding business, taxes, incorporation, liabilities, practice, home, anything that we've covered?
I can't stress enough, find themselves a good accountant, and good accountants aren't expensive. To get some of their time, and that's what these people do for a living. And to get their opinion and their direction on things can be incredibly helpful, and they can help get you going. And it's not too far down the road that those few accounting functions you can do yourself.
Awesome. So let's go back to accounting. I actually have been learning accounting myself, and I use QuickBooks. And if anybody wants help connecting to QuickBooks, it's a personal. I use it for my personal accounting, and I took an accounting course basically to teach me how to manage my money. And it relates. It's basically almost the same principles, but with a lot of different terminology when you're working with business finance. But so, do you recommend any accounting softwares that for people who wanting to learn this on their own, or and if it's not accounting softwares, you mentioned there's some phone applications and softwares that help run the business really efficiently, even like you're printing gift cards. We can go into that if you don't have any more on the accounting softwares or apps.
Yeah, I'm truly amazed, especially since I got into my own business, that the very simplest, amazing little software you can get to run off your phone. Really running multi-million-dollar companies, you want to add or change inventory, you have to have like a full IT department. It would take like a week. One of the simple little inventory control systems that I started off using was Kite, Kyte, and you can sit down if you want to take one full day. You can add all your products to your inventory. You can take pictures of them. You can put your cost in, your selling price, figure out if you want discounts. You put everything in there. Buy yourself a little $50 Bluetooth printer, thermal printer, and away you go. You set min maxes in this thing. It'll indicate to you when you're not out of product, but you've hit a minimum and you should probably reorder. And it's just one end. I would encourage this. I looked at a few of them. That's the one I selected initially starting off. But there's these new applications coming all the time, and they're just amazing. And they're so inexpensive. It was like $9 a month. I mean,
Oh,
it's almost
wow.
laughable. Yeah, and there's a little appointment. Same thing for appointments. There's some real nice appointment applications. Accounting.
Which one do you use for your appointments?
I forget the name of the first one I started using. I've now kind of switched over to a Point-A-Fix, which is a really good system. Actually, Evan Doherty's the one that showed me to a Point-A-Fix. But it's about finding the one that works best for you and the way you want to operate.
Right.
But there's a lot of these little tools, simple little tools, no different than QuickBooks is great. Intuit, just great little tools, real simple. It is what it is. We've all got these phones in our pockets, and really these phones are computers. So we're all walking around with computers in our pockets, and we should really take advantage of the power of these things. Right?
And what were some of the benefits of someone who can actually, for someone who isn't managing their inventory right now, who isn't having it systemized, and maybe they're not doing their appointments on online on an app like this? What have you found some of the benefits? And then what would be the challenges? Let's say someone's not using them. What would be the challenges they would be facing and the cost, the opportunity cost of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, inventory, because you always start off small and you learn to grow your inventory. You get your core products and you start building on them. But by setting min maxes, by having the inventory control system, you know what you're selling, right? And setting min maxes, make sure that you don't run out of product, because if you don't have product, you cannot sell it. I think I'm a perfect example. I'm living off a big island off the east coast of Canada. Everything is 10 days away from me. So if I don't have the inventory, if I'm not having an inventory control system and I test somebody and I go grab it off the shelf and it's not there, it's probably going to be 2 working weeks before I get them their product.
Wow.
People can lose interest pretty quickly.
Yeah,
right?
they'll move on.
Yeah. So, it's always imperative to me that I've got, ample product on the shelf. So as I'm selling it, all of a sudden I see a min-max queue pop up. So I know on the next day I should sit down, run through my inventory, and I can run a little report off my app. I can change it to my needs and get my orders placed. That always keeps me ahead, because if I don't have it, I can't sell it. And that's a
really
customer
important.
that I'm probably going to lose.
So you could, and there are those times too when just that one product is what 5 or 10 people needed, and they come in the row, and then next thing you know, you've missed out on a sale of 10 things, and so that's really important. And 10 days away, that's you really have to know your business and have enough foresight. A lot about business is having foresight and predictability. But since you know that you have more inventory than maybe a lot of people, maybe the average practitioner would, because of your living situation where you're at, huh?
Yeah, I've easily got $40,000 worth of inventory in my clinic, right? But at the same time, it's having those tools. It's one thing is having foresight, but having these little tools to make you aware that, oh, you're down to 20 bottles of DC, you better reorder a case, right?
Right.
You know.
So you mentioned that the min max. You're saying it quickly, but it's an abbreviation for minimum slash maximum, right?
Yeah. So on the Kite app, which is a real easy one to use, you can set your maximum quantities, which aren't that big of a deal, but the minimums, right? So when your system gets down to, say, for DC, I have mine set to 20 bottles. When my DC hits 20 bottles, the app shows me it's a little orange indicator telling me that product should be reordered. So at the end of the day, I can quickly flip through this and I can place my orders and get them done.
Nice. That's really important. So, because if you don't have it, you can't sell it, and that means you can't help people and you can't make that profit. So, by not having the proper inventory, you lose potential profits.
Oh, for sure, and clients, yeah.
And clients, yes. Okay. So let's talk about inventory, and I wanted to use the ideas of like very beginners and then more advanced practitioners who are established. What would you say is a healthy? We talked about having the base products are really important to having a successful or a foundation. Having your thyroid, your bowel, your minerals, your mags, your irons, the blood, the basic most important herbs. Um, and from what you told me, because I just went and got my foundational set recently, that's anywhere from that's about $1,000, anywhere $1,000 to $3,000 worth of herbs. I would say inventory um, to have. What do you think of? That's my perspective. What would you say about someone beginning who needs to establish their inventory? And let's say maybe they don't have an extra $3,000. What would you suggest?
Yeah. So because when you start off, you're usually testing friends and family, right? So you get a little more levity with them. So you don't have 10 bottles of DC and 10 bottles of KD. You keep 3-4 bottles of each. Each of your major thyroid products. You keep a bottle or two of each of your major bowel products. Yeah, you keep a couple magnesiums. You keep a couple iron products, maybe some minerals, and just start from there. And starting at that, basically, you just really have to pay attention to what's going off the shelf, and maybe you need to order every week. You're going to pay a little more shipping, but you don't have the big inventory costs. But as your clients grow, you start building more inventory, and you'll understand what you're going to turn. I mean, I have a pretty good idea of what's moving through my clinic. And interested in what's moving through my clinic in Cornbrook, Newfoundland is probably different than what somebody in Ontario is using, right?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I lost you for a second. We're not
No
always
problem.
using the same
I think we're
product
going to
all the
wrap it up
time.
here soon because I really appreciate your time, and this is so valuable what you're sharing. And I really think a lot of people who watch this are going to get a lot of value, appreciation, and they may come to you for more questions and um, things about like just being at home that you mentioned also is oh, it's okay. Um, so let's see. How do you choose your clients, or how do you, other than word, how does your business gain traction? How, when you were getting started, did you have people actually come to your business? Do you do any marketing? Do you do any social media? Do you have an online presence? Do you go do speaking? I'm just curious about your how clients come to you.
Yeah, so initially I think it's the same as everybody. It's friends and family. From that you start picking up some other people, and then I was really, it was important to me to let it grow naturally, so I would just let word of mouth happen. More recently this year when I moved into the new clinic and made it my full-time practice, I very slowly gained a little bit of a social media presence, and I'm no expert at that, but fortunately, I do have clients that are experts at that, and they've helped me do that quite well. You get on Google Maps, you get rep breeders, so you start getting online reviews and those sorts of things happening, and they post them on Facebook and all those sorts of things, and it's been beneficial, I have to say.
In what way has it been beneficial to go ahead and have your clients help you set up the online presence?
Well, just having that online presence, because that's always my first question when people walk in my office. I always ask, so how did you find out about me? Because I'm curious, right? And more now, I have people say, well, I googled, I googled herbalist, or I googled manual therapist, and you came up, you had 5 stars, and here I am. And or people say, I seen you on Facebook, and but I still get a lot of, because in Newfoundland here, we're still not a real big place, so I still got a lot of Joey's uncle seen you, or you treated this guy for bowel issues, and so I still get a lot of that. But more and more all the time, I think the social media and aspect of the online reviews is certainly helping me. I've been asked to do a few speaking engagements, and I really haven't embraced it yet. But I think probably in the new year here, I'm actually going to take on a few of those and sort of approach that and sort of see
What
how
kind
that
of
unfolds.
speaking engagements were you asked, if I could ask?
I've said, groups. There's been a couple, like the Ladies Auxiliary here has wanted me to go talk to them about, certain things. Um, you know, uh, there's a group of CPAs here, personal care attendants, or PCAs. Because I do so much manual therapy for that group, wanted me to go and have a talk to them about just things in general, just, some therapies they could be doing on their own, things that they could be doing for themselves, the importance of magnesium, vitamin D, just real basic things. Feel their questions. Because I always think it's really important to, when people ask me questions, I try to answer them as completely as I can. If I don't know the answer, I tell them I don't know the answer, but I will find out the answer, and I always get back to them.
That's really beautiful. I want to go on the speaking, but I have that opens up a question for me, which is, how have you experienced people receiving this new modality where you're telling people, don't tell me what's going on. I'll look at your eyes, your teeth, your tongue, and I'm going to tap on your shoulder, and I'm going to know everything about you, or I'll know where your pain is. I'll know what's going on and what you need. How do they receive that, and how is it how do they receive that? And then I have another question after.
Yeah, it's especially been interesting for the people that find me. They Google, or they end up in my office, and they understand what an herbalist is for the most part. They come in, and then I start doing a reading on them, and it's usually pretty shocking. Then you explain a lot of what's going on, and you try not to overwhelm them too much, especially in the beginning, from my perspective, because you just might freak them out a little bit. So you give them as much as they need to know, and get their attention, and usually after that point they'll pretty much do anything you ask them to do in terms of this is what I'm suggesting.
Yeah. So, um, do you find that a lot of people are pretty much, when they come to you, when they're wanting help, and after they've been tested, do a lot of people take your suggestions?
Uh, I think I've had one person in the last, well, since this year, since this calendar year, I've had one person that actually came in, I tested, and they did not take their products. One. Everybody else, and funny, it was one of those people that walked in, you look at their teeth, and you're like, yeah, I don't think they're going to buy it.
They were a left brain dominant one.
Yeah, I remember, and I even get those ones because people leave, and I'll walk out because my wife's in front, and I'll say they'll be back later today, or they'll be back tomorrow, and they
Yeah.
come back, and I've had that one person in the last year, and I often wonder about her, how she's doing actually.
Oh.
But I've had that one person who didn't didn't buy their products. And so, okay.
Oh, that's really funny. I find that too in my practice, that I haven't had anybody not want to try the suggestions, especially because they feel seen, they feel understood, they feel heard, and they feel appreciated. Um, in a different way than they do when they go to their doctor or when they go to other practitioners. Um, that is really unique about this modality that we do. Um, and so let's just go a little bit from business because you've been speaking about, we were talking about speaking, and how do you convey what it is that you do? How do you say it to people?
Uh, and that's when I have new clients. I really take my time in the beginning, and especially if they've been talking to other people, and I always say, do you understand what it is that I do? And they would say, yeah, you do herbs, and so I said, and I'll just give them a quick explanation. And I may finish up sometimes, then that's when I get into the muscle test, right? And not especially for new clients, I may double check a couple things on their arm just so they can feel and understand a little better about what's going on. Um, but yeah, I really do, especially for new clients. When it comes to retests and things like that, I kind of burn through them pretty quick. But new clients, I really shift it down to low gear, and I take my time and I explain. If they've got questions, I really try and take my time and answer those questions as completely as I can.
I love that. So just from a professional, because I want to hear from what, how a professional from the corporate world would communicate what we do. Can I ask, like, if I was a new client, say, "Hi, Dave, I saw you on Google. I don't know what you do. What's this all about?"
Yeah, so I usually I just run down to the modalities or the different parts of it. I explain
Could you
that I'm
just
a
say it to me like
iridologist.
I was a new client, so I have an idea?
Yeah, so and I keep the charts up on my wall. I said, typically I start off, I do some body reading. So I'll point at the iridology chart and I'll say, I read your eyes, and I'll do the tongue, teeth, and some other body reading as well. I'll be saying things out loud. They're not diagnoses. It's just things that your body may be saying that we need to have a look at. Particularly if it shows up more in one area, I know it's something we may need to focus in on a little bit, right? I tell them that I usually go from, I do manual therapy. So I explain I do muscle energy technique. And so that's a manual technique where I get people on the table, and I can put your muscles into their correct positions. It's not chiropractic, it's not massage therapy. It's a little different modality. Then I usually explain about scar tissue removal that I can do for people, hips and shoulders. I talk a little bit how I can do acupressure and how that works and releasing enzymes and making muscles release. I explained that sometimes, if required, I'll do electric acupuncture for people and how that functions. And then that's when I'll finish off that, I do applied kinesiology. And essentially that's a process where I ask your body questions and I get answers to that. And then I'll ask them, have you ever experienced applied kinesiology? And 99.9% of the time, the answer is no. And I ask them, can I show you a very basic applied kinesiology test? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. So I'll get them to stand up, and I'll look in their eye, and I'll look for something that's outstanding or weak, or I might just go straight to the thyroid if the thyroid's showing up. So they'll hold their arm at one side, and I'll say, so here's your heart, and here's your your thyroid, and that's when they usually the eyes open, and they say, do that again. And I was like, yeah, no problem. So do it again, and I explained to them, that this is an involuntary response from your body because essentially I'm talking to your subconscious, and your subconscious has a very vested interest in keeping all of you working really well. So even though you may not have had a voluntary control over that response, your body's going to give it to us anyway. And then I explained that the type of training that I have is a much more advanced type of applied kinesiology, where I can go into a lot more detail, and I go through all your different organs and glands, and set numbers to them based on their congestion or capacity, and just sort of work through it that way. And yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's pretty thorough, and I could see how that would help them feel comfortable. Um, I like how you broke it down to talking about the involuntary responses. Using the terms applied kinesiology, I think, is important. Um, the term, it sounds scientific. It sounds tested. It sounds like an art, an ology of science that is, they're just not aware of it, and there's a lot of those. So it fits into that part of their brain. Um, and I like that you also offer to show them, hey, can I show you a basic applied kinesiology test? And that automatically opens them. They're like, yeah. And so they're open for everything that happens. And then I like how you also say that, oh, well, basically what I'm going to be doing is just the more advanced version of this. So I go into more detail. I think that gives people a really good understanding of what they're about to experience before they do, and it builds a lot of trust. Um, and then,
Yeah, then you start doing the reading, right? So you look in their eye and you're like, or you look at their teeth and like, oh, you got that foot's bad and that hip's out, and oh, your neck up here's got something pinched, and yeah, then they really start taking everything in that you're saying, right?
and they're that that preparation. I'm just going to speak from my own experience, but that ability to create the rapport and the openness can determine how their whole path is going to go. If on that first, you talked about first impressions, but on that first initial reading, um, and experience with us as a practitioner, and the more open, the more willing they are to even try something, and then the more vested, the more they trust you and feel open, the more vested they are to continue the process and take the recommendations continuously and repeatedly without going off it or maybe thinking it's not important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once I get them through that first initial test and they're coming in, I mean, and it's this time of year here that I suggest all my clients take vitamin D, but I just don't say you should be taking vitamin D. You know, I always take those few minutes and explain to them how vitamin D works in their body, and how it acts more like a hormone than a vitamin, and explain it, and then they're like, yeah, absolutely, I do need vitamin D. So,
Yeah,
it's not me
even if
trying to
they're at
sell stuff. It's
70.
just explain how it works, and they tune into it right away.
And I think that that's so human. That is the humanness that every person is looking for. Is you're meeting them at their level, and in a way you're bringing them to your level in a encouraging, equal way. You're not being superior or demanding they do anything like some doctors do. You're not using your authority with a white coat and your big medical degree to say this is your problem and this is how you should do. And I get most of the people who come to me have been to every doctor, 10 specialists, 12 specialists, and they still haven't got the results. And then they see me and they're just blown away at how just that experience can actually open them to be more readily available for their own healing. So I think that you clearly are able to do that with your clients.
Yeah, no, it's worked really well, I have to say.
Well, thank you so much, Dave. I think we've covered pretty much all the basics. I can't think of any questions more right now, except taxes. When the end of the year comes, and if you have an accountant, will they do the taxes for you if you keep records? Or is there some specifics that we as practitioners should be keeping track of?
And again, I just want to encourage everybody to sort of meet with an accountant, because an accountant will get you going on the basics and how you should be sort of maintaining and tracking things. And you can have them do that work for you monthly. You can have them do that work for you quarterly or just once a year. If you do a good job maintaining and tracking all your expenses and records, you can have them do that once a year. And pretty much everyone I know, at the very least, gets an accountant to do that for them once a year. Then at the end of the day, if there's any issues or questions from Revenue Canada, that very nominal fee, in my opinion, that you pay an accountant to do that, then they deal with all the questions and issues with Revenue Canada. None of that, because I'm busy running my practice and making sure I have inventory. I really don't want to get into fielding and answering things for Revenue Canada and digging through receipts and that foolishness, right?
Okay. That leads me to the last question. I think, unless there's one more, but the question is around. Oh, I just had it. So Revenue Canada, have an accountant. I think it was about a U.S. question. Oh, I just lost it. Okay. Anything else that you feel? Oh, I remember the question now. Do you think that someone looking at becoming a practitioner, is this a real sustainable potential? Like, is this a real I would say category, quality job, particularly financially, if they get the system set up correctly, can it be lucrative for someone? And how what kind of numbers could someone create on an introductory level, and then maybe a more advanced level based off of, because I know you're a numbers guy, I know you understand systems and you know how to make them efficient, and you know this system. What kind of number one, is it a recommended job, like for someone to actually do full time? Clearly, you're doing it now, moving from multi-million dollars to this, and then what are some numbers that you've maybe crunched, if the systems are right and you get it done and your taxes are right, for profit a year?
Yeah, well, it can be. I guess first of all, if for somebody doing this, it's got to be the type of work you want to do.
Yeah,
I find it personally gratifying. You know, there's times that people come in and I just put their hip in for them, and I'm just like, no problem. See you next time. Should I charge them for it? Yeah, I probably should, but it's fine. In my practice, I've probably taken on really too much manual therapy. I really enjoy doing manual therapies. Manual therapy is not as lucrative as constantly testing people and putting them at the door with products. But you know, and it goes back to in terms of how profitable things can be is if you want to travel. Right now, for me, I'm pretty comfortable where I am working out of my clinic. So that limits me to the population base in my area, which is it is. I'm in Western Newfoundland, and it's not a huge place. So for someone who wants to stay in one place, I think you can make a comfortable living. There's no reason why a person couldn't turn over, $40,000 or $50,000 a year, in personal profit revenue. If a person wants to expand that and travel, bearing in mind there's more expenses with travel, and I also think there's a lot more personal sacrifice in terms of your family and those sorts of things. But yeah, if you want to take yourself into bigger population centers, and carry the inventories to take on those sorts of travel as well. I don't know if you've worked with Terry or not, but I mean, he literally has van loads of product with him everywhere he goes.
yeah,
That's he's probably got more product in one van load than I've got in my entire clinic.
yeah,
But it's a pretty big upside too. I mean, if a person wants to do $20,000, $30,000 a month, you probably could. Um, but for me and what I'm doing, that would be a pretty big sacrifice for my family and probably to my lifestyle right now.
right.
Down the road, is it something I would probably consider just so I could introduce more people into different markets, especially here in Atlantic Canada? It may be something that I do.
Okay. You mentioned cost. Um, so more inventory. It's going to be a personal sacrifice, if you have obligations and family, but also traveling on the road could be could it work well? Say someone's working 2 days or 3 days at their clinic. Maybe they go down to 2 days at their clinic and then they do 2 days or 3 days of traveling. Could it also work well that way too, you think?
It could. I know for me in my clinic right now, I'm still booking 3 weeks in advance.
Oh, wow.
So, if I take 2 days on the road, that's 2 days of people I'm not seeing at my clinic.
Oh, are you
Now,
doing 5 days a week?
yeah, right now. Well, during the summer, I did 4 days just to have an extra day a week with my kids. Um, kids are back in school, so I'm doing 5 days a week now. And don't get me wrong, out of my clinic, I still think I'm probably doing too much manual therapy, probably more than I should. But people get a lot of benefit from it, and I still do enjoy doing it. So I'm continuing. I think at some point I may train someone to do more of the manual therapy for me. But right now it's all good this way I'm working. And if you're
Yeah,
on the road, you don't take on manual therapy like that, right? You
yeah,
can't. It's just
yeah.
it's financially not viable.
So do you another financial expense? Do you have a writer, and do you pay them?
Sorry.
Do you have a writer for you? I know Terry and a lot of practitioners have writers when they either on the road, students practicing, or other practitioners who just want to get in the feel and the zone of the testing. Um, do you have a writer, and do you pay someone to do that, or do you think that's a worthy business expense? What do you think about that?
Just because I was out here by myself, I've never had anyone write for me. And I've always written for myself. So even today, people I test today, I just write for myself as I go. Yeah, it's just I've never had anyone write for me. I don't know.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
just the way I developed. That's all.
Okay. Awesome. Anything else that you'd like to say for the practitioner who is maybe they're going to take your advice, they're going to get malpractice insurance, they're going to look into getting incorporated, they're going to maybe look into getting a clinic. Is there any recommendations you have for spaces? You chose a public space. And any ideas of what would you look at for trying to choose a clinic space?
It all depends on your market. I know the space that I got is pretty reasonably priced. It's a bit of a renter's market where I am now. And for me, I'm doing this for a few more years and I'll get my own building anyways. That's just what makes sense to me. I don't want to keep investing in other people's properties for them. But really, each person has to look at their individual market. Because I know in some places rents are quite substantial. But if you hunt around, you'd be surprised what you can find. It's not always the perfect space, but you need somewhere to start, right? And get people coming to your door, create that clientele base. I started in one clinic at the beginning of this year, and in October month, I had to move to a new clinic. I needed the space, so I'm more than I went from 1,000 square feet to almost 3,000 square feet now.
Oh, tripled.
Yeah, and I'm not using all that space right now. But I have a reflexologist that's going to come start working out of my clinic with me. I have a really good acupuncturist that I like. He's probably going to come in and start working out of my facility as well. So, there's some automated spa things that I'm looking at. It's just things that, again, that space can be generating revenue when I'm not there because I don't want to be there all the time.
Yeah. So that's another big thing to notice that, real quick, what percentage would you recommend somebody using of their income for rent of their clinic space? Like, what's too much and what's too little?
I don't think I have a real good answer for that, because again, I based everything on my market here right now, which is it's a pretty good renter's market.
Right.
I mean, my monthly income now, just in terms of what we're generating every month, my rent is probably 3%,
Right.
4%.
The
For
lower the
someone
better, right?
oh, that's absolutely. Bear in mind, there's a cost benefit ratio. You don't want to, take real cheap rent and you're down in the bottom basement of a building where people can barely get in and out.
Yeah.
The things that I like about where I am now, it's very open, it's accessible, it's wheelchair accessible. Everybody can find me. There's lots of parking. It's secure. There's a lot of those things that I like about it.
Lovely. Okay. Well, I'm sure I could keep coming up with questions, but I want to respect your time and thank you so much. Really appreciate you, Dave. Really appreciate you. I'm glad that you come on this journey. I'm sorry that it came the way it did, but with your family member having the really severe strokes and heart attacks. But for anyone watching, for the next episode, Dave will tell his story about how he came from a $60 million, $80 million company, restructuring business to now full-time practitioner through the miracle that he was able to help some people get out of his personal family member get out of a really sticky situation, and which against all odds. Hate to leave a cliffhanger there, but stay tuned. Hey, thank you, Dave. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, it's all good. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, blessings. Have a good one. Bye.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.